I just found out my wife secretly inherited $500, $0 from her deceased uncle last year, lied about saving for our future, and now she's claiming I betrayed her after I discovered she's been orchestrating a legal battle over the family property. She's willing to ruin us to keep it all. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, it feels like I've been hit by a truck and then dragged under it. The most unexpected moment was when I found out my wife had been secretly plotting to take everything from me, my money, my life, everything we built together. The thing is, I always thought we were solid. We had our disagreements, sure, but I genuinely believed we were in this for the long haul. Turns out she was planning her escape and I was too blind to see it coming. It all started about 6 months ago. Had been acting weird, more distant, more closed off. She'd come home late from work, sometimes smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, and the little lies started piling up. At first, I brushed it off. I figured she was stressed, maybe having an affair, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then I noticed her phone was always hidden and she'd get defensive whenever I asked to see it. She'd say, "It's just work stuff, relax," but I knew better. Something was off. One day I decided to do a little digging. I'd been suspicious for weeks and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I checked her email, her bank accounts, anything I could get my hands on. That's when I stumbled across the biggest shock of my life. Had inherited $500,000 from her uncle last year. I mean, I knew her family was well off, but she'd never mentioned a word about this inheritance. She told me they barely had enough for vacations and stuff. Turns out she'd been sitting on this money the entire time, lying about saving for our future, lying about everything. The thing is, she had been telling me she was saving up for a house for our future, that she wanted us to have a nice life. I believed her. I even started working extra hours, saving up myself, thinking we'd buy a house soon. And here she was, hiding a fortune, probably planning to take it all and leave me behind. That's when I started piecing things together. She'd been talking about wanting to expand her horizons, and suddenly her trips to the city weren't just for shopping or visiting friends. They were meetings, probably with her lover. I confronted her that night. I sat her down, showed her what I found, and her face went pale. She tried to deny it, of course, said I was paranoid, that I was accusing her for no reason. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, messages. She got defensive, calling me paranoid, saying I was ruining our marriage over stupid suspicions. She even started crying, acting like I was the villain. But I knew her too well. She's manipulative, bitchy when she doesn't get her way, and she's a master at lying. The shock hit me hard. I felt betrayed in every possible way. All those nights I stayed up worrying about money, about our future. She'd been secretly fighting her own battle. And she was winning because I didn't see it coming. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. Was I blind? Or just too trusting? I felt angry, betrayed, and honestly hurt. How could she do this to me, to us? All those years pretending everything was fine and she was planning her escape. It's a crushing feeling, realizing the person you loved, the person you trusted the most, has been lying to you right in front of your face. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours thinking about what to do next. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to protect myself, my money, and whatever was left of whatever we had. I felt like I was in a nightmare, and I didn't know how to wake up from it. All I knew was that I'd uncovered a side of her I never wanted to see. A manipulative, selfish woman who would do anything to keep her inheritance and destroy me if she had to. That's where I am now. Trying to piece everything together, figure out my next move, and come to terms with the fact that the woman I loved was hiding a secret that could ruin everything. It's a mess, and honestly, I don't even know can trust her anymore. But one thing for sure, I'm not going down without a fight. After I confronted the first time, things didn't exactly get better. If anything, they got worse. She was furious, crying, screaming, calling me paranoid and crazy. She insisted she had a right to her own money, that her inheritance was nothing to do with us, and that I was just trying to control her. I could see the anger simmering beneath her tears, like she was furious that I dared to question her. She told me I was betraying her by doubting her loyalty, accused me of spying, and then threw in the classic line, "You're just jealous because I'm doing better than you." That really stung. I wasn't jealous, I was betrayed, but I wasn't about to let her brush this off. I pressed her harder, asking her about her trips, her late nights, her phone. She kept lying, twisting things around, throwing fake tears and accusing me of being paranoid. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I had to know what she was really up to. I started looking into her bank statements more carefully, and that's when I noticed some strange transactions. Small payments to an account I didn't recognize, charges at a hotel downtown, and some odd receipts from a boutique I'd never heard of. It all looked suspicious, but I wasn't sure what it meant yet. Then out of nowhere's attitude shifted. She started acting even more bitchy, snapping at me over every little thing. She accused me of invading her privacy, of not trusting her, and she'd say things like, "You think I'd cheat on you? Please. I'd never do that." But her eyes told a different story. I could see the guilt behind her words. She was trying to keep her composure, but she was cracking. I knew she'd been sneaking around, and her anger was just her way of deflecting. One night, I decided to follow her. I knew she was planning something, and I wanted to catch her in the act. I waited until she left the house, then followed her to that boutique she'd been visiting. She parked her car in a back alley and went inside. I waited outside, watching her go in, and then I saw her come out an hour later with a large shopping bag. She looked nervous, glancing around like she was afraid of being seen. When she got into her car and drove off, I followed at a distance. She ended up at a small hotel downtown. That was the moment I knew for sure she was cheating, and she was hiding something much bigger than I thought. I couldn't believe it. The woman I loved, who used to say she'd never hurt me, was out there lying, sneaking around, probably having sex with someone else. It all made sense now. The late nights, the secret trips, the strange charges. I felt sick. The betrayal was so raw it physically hurt. I thought about confronting her again, but I decided to wait. I needed more evidence, proof that she was actively cheating, not just sneaking around. I also needed to plan my next move carefully. Meanwhile, her attitude got even more bitchy. She started accusing me of spying, of invading her privacy, and she threw accusations back at me, saying I was insecure and paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid, I had proof now. I knew she was lying and I knew she was cheating. I just didn't have everything nailed down yet. I was angry, hurt, and more determined than ever to catch her in the act. I kept thinking about how she'd lied to me about the inheritance, about her plans, about everything. She'd lied so much that I couldn't even tell what was real anymore. That's when I realized the scope of her deception. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the money, the inheritance, and how she'd been planning to take everything from me. I remembered the inheritance money, how she'd claimed she'd saved it for us, for our future. But she'd been secretly fighting a legal battle over the family property, trying to get her hands on more of her uncle's estate. She'd been orchestrating a legal fight, I found out, even hearing a lawyer behind my back. She wanted to keep all the inheritance and the property, even if it meant ruining us, destroying what little we had left. It hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was trying to take everything I owned, everything I worked for, and leave me with nothing. I started feeling more than betrayed. I felt used, manipulated, and utterly stupid for trusting her this long. I was furious, but at the same time, I was starting to feel a strange sense of clarity. I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who would do anything to get her way, even if it meant destroying her own marriage. Now I'm at a crossroads. Do I confront her again with everything I have, exposing her, risking everything, maybe even ending the marriage? Or do I sit back, gather more evidence, and plan my revenge? Because I know she's planning to take the property, maybe even to leave me with nothing. I've never felt so betrayed, so angry, and yet I also feel a strange sense of resolve. I'm not going to let her get away with this. I'm going to fight back, even if it means tearing her world apart. But I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything's fine. The truth is, I'm hurt, and I'm furious, and I won't rest until I figure out how to turn this nightmare around. After the initial shock wore off, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. His attitude grew more hostile every day. She'd throw sly comments, roll her eyes when I asked about her whereabouts, and snap at me over the smallest things. The more I pressed her, the more she acted like I was the crazy one. I stayed silent for a while, trying to process everything, but I knew I needed to act before she slipped away completely. One night, I finally decided to follow her again. I had to see where she was going, who she was with. I waited until she left the house, then trailed her in my car. She drove to that same downtown hotel, no surprise there. I parked a few blocks away and watched her slip inside. I stayed hidden, heart pounding, until I saw her come out an hour later looking even more nervous than before. She hurried to her car, started it, and sped off. I followed at a safe distance, my mind racing. She drove to a small on the edge of town where I saw her meet up with a man. A tall, broad-shouldered guy with dark hair, definitely not someone I knew. They sat in a corner booth for over an hour, whispering and laughing. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way she was leaning in, touching his arm, she was definitely cheating. That was the confirmation I needed. There was no more denying it. Was having an affair, and she was doing it right under my nose. The anger hit me like a freight train. I felt sick, betrayed beyond words. How could she do this? How could she lie about the inheritance, then turn around and cheat on me? I thought about all the times I'd been patient, trying to trust her, trying to believe she was faithful. And now I knew the truth, that she'd been planning her escape, using her inheritance, fighting legal battles over family property, and sleeping around behind my back. I didn't confront her immediately. I wanted to gather more evidence, make sure I had everything solid. I started checking her phone, her emails, her bank transactions again. I found more suspicious charges, expenses at a hotel downtown, payments to lawyers, even some receipts from a private investigator she'd hired. Yeah, she was serious about fighting the legal battle. I discovered she'd been secretly hearing a lawyer for months, trying to strong-arm her way into the family property, claiming she had a right to it because of her inheritance. She'd been planning this all along, and I was just a pawn in her game. Meanwhile, her attitude got even more bitchy. She'd lash out at me over nothing, call me paranoid, accuse me of mistrusting her, but I knew better. I knew she was hiding something. Her lies were piling up, and I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. Every time I caught her in another lie, I felt more betrayed. How could she be so selfish, so manipulative? She lied about her inheritance, lied about her plans, and now she was sneaking around with some guy, probably having sex with him. I started thinking about how to handle this. I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to leave or for her legal plans to succeed. I needed a plan, something to expose her fully, to make her see she couldn't keep hiding. I also had to protect myself financially and emotionally. I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could, screenshots, bank statements, messages, and then confront her with everything. I needed her to understand I wasn't going to be played for a fool anymore. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that her cheating wasn't just about sex. It was about power, control, money. She wanted the inheritance, the property, and she was willing to ruin us to get it. I remembered her sneaking off to the lawyer's office, her legal battles, her attempts to get her hands on everything her uncle left her. She told me she was fighting for her future, but it was really about her greed. She saw me as an obstacle, someone standing in her way. That's when I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't let her take everything. I was angry, hurt, and feeling more betrayed by the second. I was starting to see her for who she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman willing to destroy her own marriage to get what she wanted. I was considering going to a lawyer myself, maybe even hearing one, to see what my options were. I didn't want her to walk away with my money or my life. Right now, I'm just trying to stay calm, to think clearly. I don't want to blow everything up without a plan, but I also know I can't keep pretending I don't know the truth. I've got enough evidence now to show she's been lying, cheating, and scheming behind my back. The hardest part is the emotional toll, knowing she's been playing me this whole time, using her inheritance and her legal battles as leverage. I keep asking myself how I got here, how I let this happen, and how I can come out of this hole. But one thing's certain, I won't let her get away with destroying what we had. I have to decide whether to fight, to walk away, or to find some way to turn this nightmare into a victory. The more I uncovered about's plans, the clearer it became that I was dealing with someone who was capable of anything to get what she wanted. Her bitchy attitude, the sneaking around, the secret lawyer, everything pointed to a woman who'd be willing to burn everything down just to keep her inheritance and her legal battles. I couldn't ignore the fact that she'd been orchestrating this whole thing behind my back, and I started thinking about how to respond. I knew I couldn't just confront her again without solid evidence, so I took a step back and started recording her. I installed a voice recorder on my phone discreetly so I could catch her talking about her plans. I also kept tabs on her movements, noting every suspicious trip every late night. I wanted to build a case, not just for myself, but also to expose her if it came to that. I was furious, feeling betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. But I knew I had to stay calm and collected if I wanted to come out of this with some shred of dignity intact. One afternoon, I found an opportunity. Was out shopping again, her favorite boutique, and I snuck into her closet and found her phone. I grabbed it, knowing I could get some answers. I went through her messages, her emails, and her call logs. There I found texts from the lawyer she'd been secretly working with. They were discussing her legal strategy, how to push through the property dispute, and even how to hide some of her transactions. My stomach dropped. She'd been planning this for months. But what really made my blood boil was a series of texts between her and the guy she'd been meeting, an affair she'd been denying. They arranged to meet again that night, and I had the proof now. I knew she'd been lying about everything, lying about her fidelity, her inheritance, her entire life. I felt sick knowing that the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was out there having sex with someone else and scheming to rip me off. That night, I decided I'd had enough. I waited until she was in bed, then played her own voice recordings back to her. I wanted her to hear herself, to see the look on her face when she realized I knew everything. Her reaction was priceless. She froze, then launched into denial, saying I was crazy, that I was paranoid, and that I was making this up. But I had enough evidence now to shut her down. I told her I had recordings, messages, everything. Her face turned red with rage and embarrassment, but she kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just jealous and insecure. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare, watching the woman I loved turn into a manipulative liar. I'd gone from trusting her to feeling disgusted, betrayed, and furious. I realized that her plan was to drain me financially, take the inheritance, and leave me with nothing. She'd been fighting her legal battles, secretly working with lawyers and sleeping around, all to get her hands on what she thought was rightfully hers. I felt like I'd been played for a fool. In that moment, I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I knew I had to take control. I started researching my legal options. I found out that she'd been trying to manipulate the legal system, trying to claim her share of the inheritance and the property, even though I had proof she was cheating and lying. I contacted a lawyer myself, told him everything, and asked what I could do. The lawyer confirmed that I had grounds to challenge her claims, especially since I had evidence of her deception and illegal activities. I also started planning my next move, how to confront her publicly, how to protect what's mine, and how to make sure she doesn't walk away with everything. I realized I'd have to be strategic because she was cunning and manipulative. The more I thought about it, the more I understood that I was dealing with someone who was willing to ruin us both just to get her way. I had to be smart, patient, and ready for whatever came next. Honestly, I'd never felt so betrayed and angry in my life. It's one thing to be cheated on, but to find out she'd been scheming all along, secretly fighting legal battles, hearing lawyers, and sleeping around, this was a whole new level of betrayal. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her manipulate me for so long. But now I was determined to fight back. I wasn't going to let her destroy me or take everything I had worked for. I had to stand up for myself, even if it meant tearing apart what little trust we had left. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: I'm done being the victim. From now on, I'm taking control. I'll fight for my money, for my dignity, and for whatever justice I can get. And if she thinks she's going to walk away with the inheritance, the property, and my life, she's got another thing coming. I just hope I can find a way out of this mess without losing myself completely. The days that followed were a whirlwind of planning, anger, and a strange sense of clarity. I finally had enough evidence to show that I'd been lying, cheating, and scheming behind my back for months. But confronting her directly wasn't an option anymore. I needed to be smarter about this. I decided I'd gather everything into a comprehensive case, then bring it all out in one decisive move. I couldn't let her spin her lies anymore. I knew she'd try to manipulate the situation, call me paranoid or jealous, but I had the proof, and I was ready to use it. I spent hours talking to a lawyer I found through a friend. I told him everything about her inheritance, her sneaky legal battles, her affair, her manipulative tactics. He confirmed what I already suspected. I had a solid case to challenge her claims, especially since I had evidence of her deception. We discussed my options, and he advised me to keep detailed records, to be prepared for a legal fight, and to document every suspicious move she made from now on. I started doing just that, saving screenshots, recording conversations, and keeping a journal of her suspicious activities. Meanwhile, her attitude grew even more hostile. She started accusing me of spying, of invading her privacy, and she'd lash out over the smallest things. She'd call me paranoid, crazy, and accuse me of mistrusting her. But I knew better now. I knew she was hiding something, and I was determined to expose it. Her lies kept piling up, and I could see her cracking under the pressure. Every time I confronted her, she'd deny everything, but her behavior betrayed her. I also took steps to protect myself financially. I contacted my bank to freeze any suspicious accounts and started looking into how I could secure my assets. I realized she'd been trying to push me out of our joint accounts, maybe to drain them before I could do anything. I changed passwords, canceled some of her access, and made sure I had control over the money I'd worked so hard to earn. I didn't want her to take everything without a fight. One night, I decided to confront her again, but this time with all my evidence laid out. I sat her down, told her I knew about her affair, her legal schemes, her inheritance, and her betrayal. I played her recordings, showed her the messages, and laid out everything I'd uncovered. Her face was a mask of rage and panic. She tried to deny it, of course, calling me crazy, paranoid, and jealous, but I was ready. I told her I wasn't going to let her destroy what's left of our marriage or my life. I was done playing nice. Her reaction was classic. She burst into tears, then tried to turn the tables, accusing me of ruining her life, of not trusting her, and of being possessive. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her game. I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get her hands on the inheritance and the property, even if it meant tearing us apart. I told her I was filing for a legal separation, that I was going to fight her in court, and that I'd make sure she didn't walk away with everything. The emotional toll was huge. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I'd trusted her for so long, and now I was left picking up the pieces of a shattered marriage. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time, I was in control. I was taking back my life. I realized that her manipulations had blinded me for too long, and now I was finally seeing things clearly. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came. I also started thinking about what I really wanted, whether I should fight for my marriage or walk away. Honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that her betrayal had irreparably damaged what little trust we had left. I saw her for who she was, a woman willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate to get her way. I didn't want to be part of that anymore. I was done being a victim. I was determined to protect myself and my future, no matter how painful that might be. So now, I'm preparing for the legal battle ahead. I've already contacted a lawyer, gathered all my evidence, and started planning my next steps. I know we'll fight hard to keep her inheritance and her legal claims, but I'm not backing down. I want her to realize she can't manipulate her way out of this. She's going to have to face the truth. And in the end, I hope I come out of this with some semblance of justice, even if it's just reclaiming my dignity. Because honestly, I've never felt so betrayed and angry in my life, but I also refuse to be a pushover anymore. I'll fight for what's mine. The legal proceedings took longer than I expected, but I stayed focused. Every day, I reviewed new evidence, coordinated with my lawyer, and prepared myself for the inevitable fight. Of course, was doing everything she could to spin her side, calling me paranoid, claiming I was trying to ruin her, accusing me of fabricating evidence. But I knew better. I had the proof, and I was determined to see this through. The truth was out, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of what she'd done. In court, it became clear pretty quickly that her story didn't hold up. The judge saw through her lies and manipulations, especially after I presented the recordings, bank statements, and her own texts. It was a brutal process, but I held my ground. I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion when the verdict finally came down. She was ordered to pay back what she'd tried to steal, and her claims to the property were dismissed. The legal battle was over, and I was finally free from her schemes. Walking away from the courtroom, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had lost a lot: trust, years of my life, my marriage, but I gained something more valuable: my dignity and my peace of mind. I realized that the betrayal wasn't just about money or infidelity. It was about the fundamental trust I'd misplaced. Was never the woman I thought she was. She was manipulative, selfish, and willing to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. Looking back, I see how blind I was for so many years. I ignored the warning signs, excused her bad behavior, and convinced myself that love could fix everything. But love isn't enough when someone is actively working against you. I learned that lesson the hard way. Now, I know I should trust my instincts more and pay closer attention to the red flags. No amount of love is worth sacrificing your peace and integrity. As I rebuild my life, I feel a mixture of relief and caution. I've become more guarded, more aware of who I can trust. I'm taking time to heal emotionally, focusing on myself and trying to forget the pain she caused. I know I'll be okay, stronger for having survived this mess. It's a long road, but I'm finally moving forward. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, here's what I'd say: trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Gather evidence, get legal advice, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. People can surprise you for better or worse. And sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to walk away and rebuild from the ground up. It's painful, but it's also freeing. Don't let anyone take away your peace or your future. Fight for it, no matter how hard it gets. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity are worth more than any inheritance or false love.